Hello, I'm Rupert Turton and welcome to the Business Spotlight interview where we talk to local business owners about their journey. This time I'm joined by Tim Hayward, who is a director of Continuance Capital and also managing director of Peter Lynn Limited, who manufacture printed and plain self-adhesive labels. Tim, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rupert. Good afternoon.
Yeah. So I suppose the first question has to be, with Continuance Capital and Peter Lynn, what do you do with them and how long have you been doing it?
Yeah, I suppose I'll start in a linear fashion. So Continuance Capital started right in February 2020, just coinciding with the first lockdown. So it was a very interesting time for us to be starting a business. But essentially, it was started with myself and my business partner, Taryn Abraham. And our goal with Continuance Capital was to build a portfolio of small businesses in the UK that we sort of get behind longer term, have an active role in managing, and work with the teams that are in there to have a portfolio of sort of stable, growing businesses in the UK. Yeah, so I mean, there'll be different tangents we can go down, but to summarize, then from the offshoot of Continuance Capital, the first acquisition we made was Peter Lynn Limited in Feb of 2021. So roughly a year later, again in the throes of the pandemic, we bought the business, and it had all the characteristics of the businesses we are looking for in terms of stable business. It's been growing for a long time, and a team that we love in an industry that we can get behind and see a long-term future with. And we've been hands-on there ever since.
Yeah, okay. I suppose I've got two questions that come out of this then. So obviously, I suppose, first of all, what are the challenges of investing in businesses during COVID? That must have been quite a tricky time to be doing that.
Yeah, it was. It definitely was. I think there are definitely pros and cons. The space that sort of Continuance Capital plays in. So we look at businesses on the smaller end of the market. So we're looking at sort of a million EBITDA upwards businesses is kind of the area. And so at that time, there's a lot of challenges in investing in businesses there because different investors, private equity shops and the like, were investing in different ways, and a lot of them were sort of pulling back, just trying to work out what was going on with their own portfolios rather than trying to make more acquisitions in the early days of COVID, which I think opened the door for us really to have conversations with some great businesses we may not otherwise have had a foot in the door with. That being said, once COVID sort of settled down a little bit and people kind of realized what the rhythm of it was going to be, at least know that it wasn't going to shut business down entirely, things went into overdrive on the business acquisition size for a couple of years. So 2021, 22, there was just a ton of activity around that. So going through those two very sort of distinct cycles had different challenges and required different strategies.
Yeah. So what's been the biggest challenge with Peter Lynn?
I think there have been interesting developments for us in the self-adhesive label market. So we've had issues last year where there was a material shortage, a severe material shortage caused by a strike in a crucial plant in Finland. So completely unrelated to the cost of living, completely unrelated to COVID. We were battling that along with everyone else in the industry. So a really fascinating time because we were relatively new to the industry, at least my business partner Taryn and I were, but building on relationships that the management team here had and relationships that we'd been building, a lot of the printers actually came together and were helping each other out in some ways, which was fascinating to see. So real challenges that we faced there. The business went from ordering material to print on that was being delivered next day to 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months out. And so from being able to just manage your inventory on a day-to-day basis, we then started having to forecast and buy stock and store stock in a much different way, which was incredibly challenging. But I'm happy to say it seems we're through the back of that now and things have normalized again.
Yeah, actually, that must be phenomenally difficult trying to forecast the business for a business you don't understand yet. must be really quite complex.
It was, like I say, because Peter Lynn had that great team set up already. We had a ton of industry knowledge that we were working with the guys that already understood the industry backwards. So the forecasting element, I think, was novel for most businesses in the industry because they'd always had that access to next day delivery. So that side of it was new for everyone, and we had the team here who had the industry knowledge already.
Yeah. And then I suppose going back a little bit, your background it appears to be in investment. So how are you finding moving from investing in businesses to actually hands-on day-to-day managing the business as managing director?
Yeah, it's been an interesting shift. So our background was in management consulting. So we'd been involved in business management for quite a while. But obviously it's very different when you work on 3-6 month long projects to then getting involved in and running the business day to day. So it's been quite a journey. Excuse me. It's been quite a journey for ourselves in the shift in what that day to day lifestyle looks like and the challenges that you deal with on a daily basis. But because we've come in and had that stable management team, we've been able to operate in a sense in a similar way to how we did as management consultants, in that we can look at the problems the business is facing and troubleshoot and problem solve alongside that management team who are more than competent to run the business on a daily basis. So you kind of felt like we were getting the best of both worlds there, because we had this great team, and then we could obviously bring in our expertise in sort of problem solving and strategy, where we could maybe shift the business and tweak things in minor ways. But lucky for us, the business was a very stable and strong business, and so it didn't require any kind of overhaul. So the day-to-day management now, we have a great team in place that takes care of, I would say, 80%, 90% of the day-to-day management, and then we're in the fortunate position to focus on the business longer term, and look at things more broadly, rather than sort of getting into the day-to-day management, which, like I say, was very similar to our previous careers in management consulting.
Yeah. Okay. So what have you learned about yourself during the journey then?
That's a great question. I think having personally gone through a few career changes to date and having had to be flexible in my approach, coming in here and just having the humility to just be aware of where we are in the pecking order. Yes, we've come in and invested in the business, and we may have the title. The reality is we're not the ones that know what's going on here. And so having that humility in the personal relationships it's been really rewarding and something that's been a lot of fun, to be honest, to work alongside these guys. And we're breaking down that barrier, first of all, getting to know people in a professional manner, but also on a personal level, and working out at the same time how to be the CEO, managing director of a business, but the person who's coming in and having to ask the silly questions and start at the bottom and go stand with the guy with the machines to understand how the process works. And so just being able to flip the switch between thinking strategically and larger scale in the business, and also just having the awareness of where we actually stand in terms of the knowledge base. That's been really, like I said, it's actually been a lot of fun. It's meant that I've spent time in different parts of the business and getting to know everyone on a much deeper level, which for me personally is a big part of what I enjoy in business, is just working with the team. So it's been a challenge, but I think one we've all had a lot of fun getting around. But I think it's been interesting for everyone in the business to see myself and Taryn down on the shop floor carrying boxes around, trying to work out how things operate, just so we can understand the business better.
It is actually the way to find out how a business works as well. If you don't get down there and do it, it's you're never actually going to really understand the real day-to-day issues that people have on the actually working inside the business on the production line, if you like. Yeah, absolutely. So what are your aspirations then for Peter Lynn in the next 5 years? What's it going to become? So Peter Lynn we're very ambitious with Peter Lynn. We're aware that we're in an industry that it has quite healthy growth, but it's not crazy tech level growth that we'd expect. So we're working really hard right now. We're bringing in external sales capability to build that up and to drive the organic sales, and that alongside M&A. So where we have Continuance Capital, where we'd like to build a portfolio of these, so let's say 4 to 6 businesses. Within those businesses, acquisition will also be an important part. So for Peter Lynn, we've been looking at that as well. It's been a challenging time with the last sort of 18 months. Businesses have been struggling a bit more, and so it's harder to complete transactions where people aren't they perhaps have unrealistic expectations of where things are at the moment. But with a longer term view, with that organic growth we're driving and with the M&A conversations we're having, we'd look to sort of 2.5 times the size we are right now within the next 5 years is the goal for Peter Lynn. Wow. So it's fairly ambitious.
Yeah, it is, but we think it's very achievable. Like I say, the business has grown steadily for 35 years since it was founded, with a bit more investment, a bit more sort of sales capability on our side. We think we can continue to grow organically, and then alongside that, perhaps an acquisition or two, we'll get there.
Yeah, cool. So, a slight change of tack. What would you say to anyone thinking of going into business?
Well, to start off as going sort of from the corporate world like we did into starting business for yourself, I think you need to be aware of the emotional change it will bring, because when you're in a corporate environment, I think everyone, we like to think if you're relatively happy in your job, you care and you work hard. But I'd say I care more now, and the highs are higher and the lows are lower. And so just acknowledging that, and so like for me, having a business partner who I can sit down after a great day and no one else will understand how excited we are to have someone to share that with, but equally on the days where things are feeling a bit tougher, to have somebody sit there and have a cup of coffee and sort of go, well, we'll get through this, we'll move on, but it feels pretty bad. So the highs and lows are higher and lower than they were in corporate life. So I think I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm absolutely loving it, but I don't think I quite appreciated how the emotional connection to your work changes when you go into business for yourself.
Yes, yeah. So how would you deal with that emotional roller coaster as well? That's the obvious question that throws off. I think anyone who's got a business, by the way, Tim, will be very familiar with that roller coaster. I think that's what we all go through on a weekly, even a daily. I mean, let's face it, that can happen in the space of a day, can't it?
Yeah.
But yeah. So what advice would you give to somebody going into business to deal with that roller coaster?
It's probably two pieces of advice that I'm leaning on that are working quite well. The first I take from sport, so I just love sports. A lot of my analogies will come from there. But what you hear about yourself, now that's not necessarily relevant in business, but the good days aren't as good as they feel, and the bad days aren't as bad as they feel. I think it's human nature to exaggerate those emotions, and so I think moderating yourself on both the good days, acknowledging that, it's great to be excited, but you haven't solved the world's problems in a day, the same way that the world hasn't ended on a bad day. So just moderating that and acknowledging where your emotions go on that, I think, is important. Now I forgot my second point. No, we'll stick with the first one then.
No, it's fair enough. Happens to us all. Overstretched yourself slightly there. So a bit more personal then. Who is the first person you think about when you think about success?
For me, there's so many. I mean, so you might have noticed the accent coming from South Africa. I think there are political figures, there's sporting figures, business figures that I've looked up to and that I admire. But the person that I think I would like to emulate more in a business context is probably Richard Branson. That he really has brought his own original thought to every endeavor he's gone after. Now, he's had sort of successes and failures, but I really admire the way that he doesn't assume that the establishment is right. He comes in, he thinks about it, and he does it his way. And I think there's a lot to be said for bringing your own thought and not necessarily being naive, but don't second guess your own intuition. I think he's thought of things, he's had confidence in them, and he's gone for it. And I really admire that. And the second part, which is sort of closer to me personally, would be I really appreciate the way he changed the way customer service is thought about at Virgin. So he put his own employees first as the core of the business, which was quite innovative for the time. It's probably quite crazy to think, okay, my customers aren't first, but my employees are. But his logic being that, well, if you look after your employees, if they're happy and productive employees who are working well and enjoying the work, they'll take care of your customers for you. So I think there's an element of truth that can be taken from that to any business. And I really just love the way he's thought about his own businesses in a unique and original way, and has had the confidence to go after them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also, of course, it's also what he does outside of his businesses as well, isn't it? I mean, some of the he did the fastest passenger crossing of the Atlantic, and the thing he did with the balloon, circumnavigating the world in a hot air balloon. Yeah, he's done some crazy stuff as well.
Yeah.
I think it says quite a lot about Richard Branson, actually, just his attitude to taking those sorts of risks and trying things that on the face of it sound impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like I say, it's a similar concept for me. I can almost see his thought process of, he gets an idea and he thinks, well, why not? Maybe someone else says, well, that sounds crazy, and dismisses it. But I think I love that place of starting of, well, why not, or why not me? And he's really embodied that through his career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Tim, it's been lovely talking to you today. If anyone wants to contact you, I guess actually the question becomes for Peter Lynn and also for Continuance Capital, how should they make contact with you?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So like I say, that you'll have a wide audience of businesses, especially here in the Midlands. For Continuance Capital, if you are thinking about how to go through succession, if you're having issues about moving on and going to the long-term future of how the business is going to go, please reach out to us. We love this kind of thing. We love chatting about it. We'll share our ideas. So if any business owners are thinking about that, they can get hold of me at tim@continuancecapital.co.uk. And then for Peter Lynn, if there's anything that anyone wants to get in touch with us, feel free to get hold of me personally, but also the easiest one that's monitored all the time will be sales@peterlynn4labels.co.uk. You can probably tell from that it was a domain that was bought in the 90s and slightly different mindset. It's still working.
Absolutely. Tim, great talking to you today. Thank you for your time.
Likewise, Rupert. Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.